A long time ago, in Africa, when there was nothing like Christianity and the people worshipped the gods of their ancestors, there lived a girl called Asambele. She was very beautiful, and all the men in the village and environs wanted to marry her. Her parents were very proud to have such a beautiful daughter and hoped one day a good suitor will come forward for a hand in marriage, and that will elevate the status of the family. One day the prince and heir to the throne of Akoko, the kingdom where Asambele belonged, caught sight of her and said she was the one he wanted to marry. His parents were surprised because there was someone he was already betrothed to. How can he change his mind so suddenly? The king, his father, said to his wife suddenly. It's not possible. I cannot allow my son, a prince, to be that knave, to be wavering among women. He had already chosen him, right? Why choose this one and dump the other one? No, I won't have it. His wife, the queen, said, you know your son, once the prince changes his mind, nothing can convince him otherwise. How will his betrothed take it then? The king asked. This is a big embarrassment to the family, to my kinship. She has to take it in good faith, replied the queen. There's nothing we can do. We cannot force the prince to marry the person he doesn't want to. But why did they choose her in the first place? He would have waited. And that was it. The prince said it was assembly he wanted, and there was nothing the king could do but to start making advances to get assembly for their son to marry. And he dumped the betrothed he had chosen earlier. People were not happy about that, but there was nothing they could do because the prince had spoken. Meanwhile, in the land of Dariye, a wealthy young man named Achisom lived with his parents. He was from a very prominent family in the kingdom, and he was just passing on his way to his business when an old female soothsayer saw him and said, "Oh, young man, your wife to be is about to be taken in marriage by a prince somewhere in the world, and you are here doing only heavens know what. Within a few days, you will get the news of a marriage to take place. That is your bride." Achisom was surprised to hear that. He listened carefully, but could not make out what the old woman was saying. He knew she always prophesied to people, and they always come to pass. But what she was saying right now made no sense to him at all. He went back home and told his parents about it, and they were baffled at what the woman had said. But they just remained aloof because maybe sometimes Susaya may say something that is not right, they thought. The following week, Achisom's friends came to him and invited him to an introduction ceremony in another kingdom, Akoko. That was Asambele's kingdom, where she lived. And he told his parents he was going with his friends to the village, to that kingdom. His mind never crossed anything to what the old woman had told him. It was the prince of Akoko that had come to Asambele's house to see her parents for a hand in marriage. And if all went well, they would be married within a few weeks. A royal marriage at that. And that was the marriage. That was the introduction that Achisom's friend had invited him to. Asambele's parents, families and friends thought her very lucky to have both beauty and the royal throne ahead. On that day of the introduction, the prince and Asambele were brought forward and asked if they agreed to the marriage, and they both said yes. There was a thunderous applause. The applause made Achisom to look up, and his eyes went straight to the girl. As soon as his eyes caught the sight of Azambele, it was as though a strong hand wrenched his heart. And as he looked at her face, he felt as if his wife was the girl standing right there before him. An emotion of instant love filled his heart, and he shouted, "No, she's mine." Everyone turned towards the direction of the voice, but quickly, Achisom bent down out of their sight. Achisom left and went back home with his friends to their village, fuming. When he got home, he told his friends what the old woman had told him, what she had prophesied, and how he had felt when he looked into Azambele's face. And his friends were surprised. They all concluded that they must not allow the prince to marry Azambele because the gods had already given her to Achisom. Achisom's friends found out also that the prince was already betrothed to someone, and felt it was the wrong thing of a prince of a kingdom to do to a girl, and so they felt he had to marry that girl and leave Azambele alone for Achisom. They began to plot what to do fast before the prince became tied to Azambele. It was agreed that very early in the morning, when the girls went to the stream, very early, when everywhere was still dark, to fetch water, they were to capture Azambele and take her to an old house that was abandoned in the forest in their village, and keep her there until she agreed to marry Achisom. Few days later, they carried out their plans, and Azambele was taken to the house in the forest, captured. Azambele was told she had been captured because the gods had given her as the wife to be of their leader, and that she must accept his hand in marriage. Otherwise, she will not be returned to her kingdom. But Azambele refused vehemently. "Then you will never leave this place or see your family again," Azambele's friends said. Achisom's friends said. Azambele was furious. "How dare you do this to me?" she fumed. "Don't you know this can cause war between your kingdom and ours?" she asked. "Well, we know," one of them replied, "but the gods must be obeyed first before mortal men." That was it. They stayed quiet and watched the kingdom of Akoko, where Azambele hailed from, go wild at the fact that the prince's bride-to-be had gone missing. They searched left and right everywhere in their kingdom. They could not find Azambele. But after about a week that Azambele went missing, Achisom went to the house in the forest to see what was happening. His friends told Azambele their boss was coming to see her, and she had better make up her mind to accept him, which Azambele said she would never. But as soon as Achisom got there, as soon as Azambele set eyes on him, there was an instant jolt, and she knew immediately as her body was shaking that he was the right man for her. The gods had chosen both of them to be man and wife. She had never seen a man as tall, well-built and handsome as he was in her entire life. It wasn't long before both of them became deeply involved in their discussions. What the gods had joined together will always fall into place accordingly and never fall apart, and they will always find themselves attracted to one another. Azambele spent 2 months in the forest house, and by the end of the 2 months, she had become pregnant for Achisom. There would have been war between the 2 kingdoms, but the gods used the same old woman to bring peace to the community. Achisom married Azambele, and the prince later married the first girl he had betrothed. That's the end of the story. Please watch out for part 2. Like,